Chapter 1. The Vessel and the Void. The smog over Delhi was a mosaic of human activity, in which a blanket of environmental particles and contaminants was scattering glowing amber light under the rhythm of the city's night. PK, from a utopian planet of harmonious energy beings, comes to the planet Earth to conduct his emic research, wanting to understand the insider perspective of human life. He is an alien anthropologist, an academician, on a mission of emic immersion in human life with the objective to understand why Earth's civilizations, despite their profound potential, are crippled by self-destructive social hierarchies, racism, and systemic corruption. To truly decode the paradox of human injustice, he needs a vessel, a human corpse, to live as a human being, to experience human life the way it is lived from the inside. From the cockpit of his hidden ship, PK monitored the data streams coming out from Delhi. Billions of separate data points, like heartbeats, financial transactions, distress calls, and prayers, came together to make a cluttered symphony. It was a stark, beautiful dissonance from the peaceful, collective harmony of Elysium, a remote star abode to PK. His goal was to utilize advocate Rajesh Kapoor's corpse in his research work, whose body was the only light emitting on a rain-slicked highway at the edge of the city. Advocate Rajesh was a paradox, an upper-caste Brahmin who used his power as an advocate to protect the weak. And he was a psychological support for a family that was falling apart because he didn't care. For PK, his life and death were both exceptional instances of an emic lens. PK guided his ship to a deserted warehouse close to the scene of Rajesh's accident. The smell of rust and forgotten debris filled the warehouse. Rain pounded the corrugated iron roof in a rhythmic pattern. The vessel, deceased Rajesh's corpse, was lying there on a stained tarpaulin. Rajesh's body was an artwork of violent trauma, with his chest a collapsed monument and his limbs at odd angles. The scene did not disgust PK, he only experienced intense scholarly curiosity. He created the neural resurrection apparatus, a shimmering orb that cast shifting mother-of-pearl light while hovering over Rajesh's corpse. Revival wasn't a gentle process. As Rajesh's body convulsed and his bones snapped back into place with audible cracks, a low murmur filled the warehouse. Veins throbbing with extraterrestrial energy glowed like liquid sapphire as flesh knitted itself together. The sharp smell of ozone quickly joined the metallic tang of blood. PK rebooted the vessel, Rajesh's body as a technician's detachment. PK then began to meld with the deceased body. The repaired neural pathways were inundated with human consciousness. PK's energy form had never experienced such a wave of emotions. He felt the dull, pulsating pain of severe bruises and a persistent hunger rumbling in his stomach, PK Rajesh's. The sensation of rain evaporating on his fresh skin felt too cold. The distant wail of a Delhi police siren seemed to strike him like a physical assault on his senses. The influx of data was overwhelming. The world was a blur of texture and shadow when PK Rajesh opened his eyes, human eyes. His movements were awkward and uncoordinated as he sat up. He turned his hands, Rajesh's hands, over and felt the lines on his palms and the ridges on his fingertips, which were meant to hold a destiny that he had just taken from himself. Log entry: PK's anthropological observations transmitted to his planet regularly. The initial immersion in the vessel, Rajesh's corpse, was successful. The sensory overload was 187% higher than anticipated. However, the physical experience proved to be incredibly ineffective. He put on the ripped, bloody suit jacket and stood, staggering. The wool of the jacket was moist and rough. PK turned a confirmed death into a miraculous survival story by using the device's residual charge to change the accident site evidence while stumbling out into the monsoon night. The Kapoor home was a tranquil refuge from worry in the middle of a sleeping metropolis. PK Rajesh stood at the door, rain dripping from his hair. He could feel the emotional frequencies from within the body. A sharp spike of pain, a low thrum of despair, and a flicker of emotionless routine. He pressed the doorbell. The door flew open. Mira's face was tearful and distraught as she stood there. For a moment, her breathing stopped. Then she made a sound that was half gasp, half weeping. Rajesh? The police called us and said the car was totally destroyed. They stated that there was no possibility of your survival. How are you alive? PK accessed the memory banks of Rajesh. He invoked the metaphysical explanation for the inexplicable, a simple way to resolve a problem that man is using as an escape. A miracle, Mira, he said in a halting voice that sounded strange to him. I was spared by the gods. She hugged PK Rajesh. Log entry. It's fascinating how theology bridges the gaps in reason, and how humans invoke invisible forces to explain the inexplicable. How faith fills the voids of logic is truly intriguing. Her embrace was a whirlwind of warmth, shaking, and the aroma of sandalwood soap as she pulled him close. PK Rajesh mechanically raised his arms to pat her back. It felt like a strange gesture, akin to a complicated puppet. The noise caused Arjun and Priya to run. PK's analytical mind picked up on their expressions as they changed from disbelief to glowing joy to confusion. Papa. Priya sobbed and gave him a hug. We thought we had lost you. Arjun remained behind, his eyes checking with the lawyer's watchful gaze rather than with joy. He said, it was a fatal accident according to the police. The vehicle was completely destroyed, and there isn't a single scratch on your body. PK Rajesh said, I was flung out, which was a straightforward statement. My body is strong. Arjun retorted in a low voice, the body isn't that resilient. Enough, Arjun. Mira scolded, her voice breaking with passion. Your dad has returned home. It's a blessing. A second opportunity. Her eyes begged for normalcy as she glanced at PK Rajesh. You might be hungry. I'll reheat dinner. They took a seat at the table. Mira put a bowl of hot yellow dal and 2 chapatis on the plate in front of him. PK Rajesh watched the meal. He picked up a chapati, which had an elastic, silky texture. You didn't touch your chai, Rajesh, Mira said, her voice still shaking. You also consumed the paratha without any achar. It was like eating paper without it, you used to say. PK examined the small bowl of pickled green mango, a spicy seasoning with a high Scoville score that caused an unreasonable reaction to pain. Mira, my systems are still recalibrating after the incident. Some human condiments cause a physiological burn reaction that the brain perceives as enjoyment, an intriguing paradox. There was silence at the table. Priya gazed. With a sharp tinkle, Arjun set down his fork. Systems? Recalibrating? Mira's face was pale as she whispered. Sometimes you sound like one of Arjun's computers, Rajesh. You are not a machine, you are a man. Yes. A man, characterized by his routines. PK Rajesh said, his eyes glancing with thought. The achar is a symbol of individual preference and cultural identity. I know it. He took a bite of the plain chapati, which was dry and lacked any flavor. He noticed Mira's expression change, her happiness transformed into a deep, unsettling anxiety. PK, now known as PK Rajesh, had succeeded in the initial test of immersion in Rajesh's body. However, he was already struggling with the much more complicated challenge of belonging and navigating family relationships within Rajesh's family. Later, she reached for him in the dark bedroom that smelled of Mira's talcum powder and Rajesh's sandalwood cologne. Her hand was warm on his chest, over the artificially robotic rhythmic steady beat of his heart. PK Rajesh examined the gesture while lying motionless. Looking for a relationship. Assurance of being there. He didn't do the same. The warmth was nice information, but he didn't incline to reciprocate. She said in a tearful whisper, I thought I lost you. PK Rajesh knew from his databases that her tears might be a sign of happiness. However, a different message was conveyed by the slight tightening of her hand on his arm and the slight increase in her breathing rate. This was sadness. Sadness over the lack of intimacy and the gap that had appeared where her husband ought to be. Supplemental log entry, the ship is safe. The identity is accepted on a provisional basis by the family. However, the internal fractal divisions of the human heart are now the main focus of my research, rather than the external societal divisions of caste and race. The integration is turning out to be more difficult than anticipated. The mission has started. Outside, Delhi was still experiencing the unrelenting, uncaring rain.